Iowa is known as one of the most boring states in America. That reputation makes it all the more surprising that on a single night in 1934, 3 post offices were robbed in the small town of Postal, Iowa, along with 8 others across the Midwest. This is the story of the night Iowa shook. It's me, and you're watching this channel. On the night of October 22, 1934, a group of men dressed as farmers were driving through the small town of Postville, Iowa. Their car broke down, and they asked a local garage owner if he could help. Instead of getting a mechanic, the men returned with guns blazing, tying up the garage owner and his 2 sons before stealing the truck and driving off into the night. They weren't just stealing any truck. They had taken the getaway vehicle for a series of post office robberies that had been keeping law enforcement officials busy since September. So far, the gang had hit 10 post offices, all in small towns, all on nights when the moon was full, and all while wearing dark clothing and face masks. They seemed to have a particular preference for robbing post offices on the borders of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And while their MO was to make off with thousands of dollars worth of government bonds, the authorities had no idea who they were dealing with or how many members the gang even had. But those about to change. After tying up the garage owner, the men had taken off in his truck, but not before leaving behind some clues. The authorities would soon find fingerprints and through them discover the name of the gang's leader, Harry Pierpont. Pierpont was already on the FBI's radar for bank robberies in Kansas and Nebraska. And now it seemed he was leading a crew of robbers across state lines, defying the law and having a laugh at the expense of the federal government. But no one was laughing harder than Lester Gillis, aka Babyface Nelson, who would later write to the warden of Alcatraz, asking to be transferred to federal prison because he was homesick for Iowa. You see, Gillis was one of the men involved in the robberies. He and his partner in crime, John Paul Chase, would meet up with Harry Pierpont and 2 other men in Postville to case the local post offices. When the men left to get the garage truck, Gillis and Chase snuck into the post offices and made off with nearly $12,000, or the modern-day equivalent of over $225,000. Giles would later claim that he only participated in 2 of the robberies, but evidence would show his involvement in at least 4 of them. Law enforcement was closing in, and as the gang made their way south, they picked up 2 more members in St. Louis, bringing the total number of robbers to 8. Their next stop was Evansville, Indiana, where they robbed another post office, bringing their grand total to $118,000, or the modern-day equivalent of over $2 million. With the feds hot on their trail, the gang decided to lay low in a farmhouse near Owensboro, Kentucky. It was there that they learned that President Franklin D. Roosevelt had just declared war on crime. The outlaws laughed and ate breakfast together, making plans to rob another post office the following night. On October 1934, 4 of the men went into the post office in Madisonville, Kentucky. The next day, an informant tipped off the authorities that led to a shootout with the FBI. 4 of the robbers were killed, including Harry Pierpont and Babyface Nelson. Only 2 of the robbers would serve time for their crimes. One was sentenced to 15 years and the other 10, but after serving less than half their sentences, both men were paroled. And while the robberies across Iowa and Kentucky were stopped, the gang's spree would continue for years. The remaining 2 members of the gang would go on to rob banks across the country, living lives of luxury and crime until they were finally caught and sent to prison. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, stay tuned. And if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member.